The sun, a relentless eye in the vast, bleached blue canvas of the mid-July sky, hammered down on Harmony Creek estates. It baked the terracotta tiles surrounding the community pool until they shimmered with heat haze and turned the turquoise water into a dazzling, almost aggressively bright jewel. This pool wasn't just a pool, it was the centerpiece, the glittering heart of a community that measured its worth in flawless landscaping, architectural uniformity, and an almost pathological adherence to its extensive rulebook. Harmony Creek didn't just value order, it weaponized it, wielding bylaws and committee oversight like instruments of social control. Presiding over this aquatic domain, the crown jewel of Harmony Creek's amenities was Patricia Carmichael. As chair of the pool committee, she viewed the shimmering water and its surrounding deck not as a place for relaxation and recreation, but as a stage upon which her authority and aesthetic sensibilities were performed daily. Her posture was invariably rigid, her blonde hair scraped back into a bun so tight it seemed to pull her eyebrows into a permanent state of critical elevation. Patricia believed, with the unwavering conviction of a true zealot, in maintaining the harmony of Harmony Creek, a harmony defined by visual perfection, quiet conformity, and the exclusion of anything or anyone deemed disruptive to the meticulously crafted ambiance that, in her mind, directly correlated to property values. For the past month, the unwavering beam of Patricia's critical attention had fixed itself upon Sergeant Major Frank Sutton. Retired, Frank was a relatively new resident, drawn to Harmony Creek by the promise of quiet streets and, specifically, the allure of the pool. He'd bought one of the smaller, more modest homes on the periphery of the development, seeking refuge after a lifetime spent in far less tranquil environments. There was an undeniable dignity about him, a stillness forged in crucibles Patricia Carmichael couldn't begin to imagine. But decades of service had left their indelible mark. He walked with a subtle, persistent limp, the ghost of shattered bones healing imperfectly. The left sleeve of his simple polo shirt often concealed the advanced prosthetic limb that replaced the arm sacrificed on some forgotten battlefield halfway across the globe. A network of pale scars traced paths across his face, neck, and forearms, faded roadmaps of violence endured, souvenirs from a final, brutal encounter that had definitively ended his active career. Frank neither hid nor advertised his injuries. They were simply part of his landscape now, integrated into the man he had become. He moved with a deliberate economy, his gaze steady, his demeanor quiet, almost reserved. All he sought in Harmony Creek was a measure of peace, a place to quietly rebuild strength, and regular access to the pool. The low-impact resistance of the water was crucial for his ongoing physical therapy, prescribed by VA doctors to maintain mobility and manage chronic pain. It was also, perhaps more importantly, a small anchor to normalcy, a place where the rhythmic repetition of swimming could momentarily soothe the frayed edges of nerves worn thin by years of hypervigilance. Patricia Carmichael, however, possessed an unnerving inability, or perhaps unwillingness, to see beyond the surface. When she looked at Frank Sutton, she didn't register the quiet strength, the history of service, or the therapeutic need. She saw only imperfection, disruption, an unwelcome deviation from the smooth, unblemished facade she relentlessly policed. His scars were, in her private lexicon, unpleasant. His state-of-the-art prosthetic, a marvel of engineering, was disturbing. His very presence poolside seemed to violate the unwritten, yet fiercely guarded, aesthetic code of Harmony Creek. He didn't fit. Her campaign against him had begun subtly, a series of pinpricks designed to make him feel unwelcome. First came the unfounded accusations whispered just loud enough for him to overhear. complaints about him tracking dirt onto the pristine deck, despite Frank being almost obsessively careful, always rinsing his feet meticulously at the mandatory shower station. He'd even taken to bringing his own towel to place under his prosthetic when resting poolside, anticipating such complaints. When that failed to deter him, Patricia escalated. Suddenly, obscure pool rules, long dormant in the thick binder she consulted like scripture, were resurrected and selectively enforced. One afternoon, she intercepted him halfway between the gate and the water's edge, pointing a quivering finger at his swimwear. "Mr. Sutton," she'd announced, her voice carrying across the deck, Rule 7. Subsection B. Clearly states and traditional swimwear only. That garment is not appropriate. She gestured towards the specially designed adaptive swim trunk Frank occasionally wore, featuring reinforced seams and closures compatible with his prosthetic. It was functional, modest, and utterly inoffensive. Yet Patricia wielded the rulebook like a weapon. Frank, weary of conflict, had simply returned home that day without argument. Most recently, her tactics had become bolder, moving from passive aggression to active obstruction. Several times in the past week, she had physically blocked his entry at the pool gate, her expression a mask of false concern overlaying steel. "Oh, Mr. Sutton," she chirped, clipboard strategically positioned. "I'm so sorry, but the pool is currently at maximum capacity, according to fire code." A quick glance would reveal only a handful of swimmers scattered across the large pool. Another day, "Terribly sorry, unexpected pump maintenance just started. Pools closed for the next hour." Yet, minutes later, other residents would stroll through the gate unchallenged. Her latest excuse, delivered with saccharine insincerity just yesterday, was that his monthly HOA dues payment, automatically debited from his account like clockwork, hadn't properly registered in the system yet. A blatant lie, easily disproven, but effective in the moment. Each time, Frank met her fabricated excuses and thinly veiled hostility with the same quiet, almost unnerving patience. He'd learned long ago to choose his battles, to conserve his energy for fights that mattered. This poolside tyrant, fueled by ignorance and prejudice, felt beneath engagement. He would simply offer a slow, deliberate nod, his eyes holding hers for a moment, revealing nothing of the frustration churning beneath his calm exterior. Then turn and walk away. The retreat felt like a small defeat, a surrender he wouldn't have countenanced in his former life. But the prospect of engaging in a petty, public argument felt infinitely more draining. He hadn't survived ambushes and IEDs. To be drawn into skirmishes over swim trunks and fabricated capacity limits. Yet, the pool was important. The cool embrace of the water offered relief his aching joints couldn't find elsewhere. The rhythmic strokes provided a meditative focus, a temporary ceasefire in the low-grade war his nervous system still waged. He paid his substantial HOA dues religiously. He followed every posted rule, often more diligently than other residents. He had every right to access this amenity, this small slice of therapeutic peace he'd been promised when he bought into the idealized vision of Harmony Creek. What Patricia Carmichael, in her bubble of poolside sovereignty and aesthetic obsession, failed utterly to grasp was the history contained within the man she so casually dismissed. She saw scars and a prosthetic. She didn't see the man who had, for nearly 2 decades, commanded the city's elite special weapons and tactics team. Sergeant Major Frank Sutton wasn't just a retiree. He was a living legend within the Metro Police Department. His name was spoken with reverence, synonymous with tactical genius, unwavering calm under unimaginable pressure, and a fierce, almost paternal protectiveness of the officers under his command. He hadn't just led the team. He was the team's foundation, its moral compass, the standard against which they measured themselves. He'd led entries into barricaded buildings, negotiated standoffs with armed and desperate individuals, made split-second decisions where lives hung in the balance. The men and women currently serving on that elite team weren't merely former colleagues. They were his fiercely loyal proteges, his extended family, bound by experiences and a level of trust forged in the crucible of shared danger. They owed him their skills, and in some cases, their lives. News of Frank's difficulties didn't come from the sergeant major himself. Frank Sutton was constitutionally incapable of complaining about personal slights. He bore his burdens, physical and otherwise, with a stoicism that bordered on impenetrable. Instead, word filtered through the mundane channels of neighborhood gossip. Officer Mike Johnson, a muscular, sharp-eyed operator who had served under Frank for 8 years, happened to live just a few streets away in Harmony Creek. His wife, Claire, a friendly nurse, frequented the community pool with their young children. One sweltering afternoon, Claire witnessed Patricia Carmichael confronting Frank at the gate, her voice laced with that particular brand of venomous sweetness Patricia reserved for those she deemed beneath her. Claire recounted the incident to Mike later that evening, her own voice trembling with indignation. She was just awful to him. "Mikey," Claire reported, pacing their kitchen. She actually told him his scars were distressing the other patrons, and implied his prosthetic was insanitary for the pool. There was hardly anyone even there, and Frank, he just stood there, absorbed it without a word, and turned around and walked home, like he was ashamed. It made me furious. It was just wrong. Mike felt a familiar surge of protective anger, hot and visceral. Frank Sutton, the Sarge, a man who had faced down automatic weapons fire without blinking, who had carried wounded officers out of harm's way, being publicly humiliated and harassed by some power-tripping HOA tyrant over scars earned in the line of duty, over a prosthetic limb that was a testament to his resilience. It was unthinkable, intolerable. He brought it up the next day during a rare moment of downtime at the SWAT precinct, speaking quietly to Sergeant Ben Carter and a few other veteran operators who had served longest under Frank. He relayed Claire's account, his voice tight with controlled fury. The reaction was instantaneous and unanimous. A low growl of collective anger rippled through the group. Faces hardened. Loyalty to Frank Sutton ran bone deep within this unit. "Are you kidding me?" muttered Maria Diaz, the team's renowned sniper, her usual calm demeanor replaced by a dangerous glint in her eyes. "Carmichael, that woman needs a serious reality check. The Sarge deserves nothing but respect, especially in his own damn neighborhood. We should file an official complaint," suggested Officer Ramirez, one of the younger team members, newer but already deeply respectful of the Sutton legend. Discrimination based on disability, harassment. Ben Carter, a seasoned operator known for his pragmatic approach and dry wit, shook his head, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "Official complaint against who?" "The HOA. It'll disappear into a black hole of committee meetings and procedural delays. Best case, they slap Patricia on the wrist 6 months from now. Worst case, it makes things even more awkward for the Sarge. You know Frank. He'd hate being the center of an official incident. He'd feel mortified." They all nodded. Frank's intense privacy, his aversion to drawing attention to himself or his injuries, was legendary. He wouldn't thank them for launching a formal crusade on his behalf, no matter how well-intentioned. "But we can't just let this stand," Mike insisted, slamming a fist lightly on the briefing table. "We can't let her bully him out of using his own pool, especially when he needs it for his pint." And an idea began to percolate in the ensuing silence, sparked by Carter. He leaned forward, a slow, calculating grin spreading across his face. Okay, so official channels are out. Sarge wouldn't want it, but what if? What if we just show up, offer some visible support, remind folks, especially Miss Pool Committee Chair, exactly who Frank Sutton is, what he represents, without saying a word. Show up how? Diaz asked, intrigued. Like this, Carter elaborated, the plan taking shape. Next Saturday afternoon. Peak pool time. We coordinate with the Sarge. Frame it as a team get-together, a chance to catch up. Say we want to check out his new neighborhood pool. Then, we escort him. All of us who are off duty. We walk in with him, respectful, low-key, find a spot, relax, maybe swim a few laps ourselves. No confrontation, no intimidation, just presence, solidarity. Let's see how brave Patricia Carmichael feels berating Frank about his appearance when he's flanked by a dozen or so of his, friends. The audacity of the plan was immediately appealing. It was unconventional, subtly subversive, and perfectly tailored to both support Frank and deliver a pointed, non-verbal message to Patricia. They agreed instantly. No uniforms, no badges. Nothing that screamed police. Casual attire, workout gear. Shorts, t-shirts. Some might wear subtle team shirts, the kind they wore to the gym, bearing a discreet, stylized Metro SWAT or unit logo, but nothing overt. It wasn't about flexing authority. It was about demonstrating unwavering loyalty, a quiet show of force, not of arms, but of respect. The trickiest part was getting Frank on board. Mike Johnson volunteered for the delicate task. He visited Frank later that week, bringing pizza and beer, framing the idea carefully. Sarge, bunch of us were talking. We miss hanging out. We were thinking. Saturday afternoon. Maybe we could all come by, see your new place. Maybe hit that fancy pool you told us about. Make an afternoon of it. Frank was immediately suspicious, his eyes narrowing slightly. He knew his men. What's this really about, Mike? Mike sighed. Deciding honesty was the best approach. He relayed Claire's story, the team's anger, their desire to support him without causing an official fuss. We just want to be there with you. Sarge, show this woman she can't push you around. No drama, just your guys having your back. We swim. We hang out. We leave. Let her be the one to make a scene, if she dares. Frank was quiet for a long time, staring out the window. He hated being the cause of any trouble, hated the idea of needing protection. But the thought of facing Patricia's predictable hostility again, alone, filled him with a profound weariness. The image of walking towards that pool gate surrounded by the familiar, steady presence of his team, his brothers and sisters in arms. It offered a quiet bolstering of his own depleted reserves. A rare, faint smile touched his lips. All right, Mike, he conceded, his voice low. Tell the team okay. Saturday afternoon. But you heard me, no rough stuff. Keep it cool. We're just friends going for a swim. Saturday dawned blindingly bright, the heat already radiating off the pavement by mid-morning. By 2 o'clock, the Harmony Creek Estates community pool was humming with the sounds of summer, children's laughter echoing from the shallow end, the rhythmic splash of lap swimmers, the low murmur of adult conversation from beneath colorful umbrellas. Patricia Carmichael was in her element, patrolling the perimeter of the pool deck with the focused intensity of a prison guard, clipboard clutched tightly, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She scanned relentlessly for infractions, a stray pool noodle in the lap lane, improper footwear, a group of teenagers getting too boisterous. Each minor rule violation spotted and corrected seemed to reaffirm her sense of purpose, her control over this small, sun-drenched kingdom. Then, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Heads began to turn towards the entrance gate. A group was approaching, a large group, maybe 15 men and women, moving with an easy, confident camaraderie. They were dressed casually, shorts, t-shirts, athletic wear, sunglasses. They were fit, alert, their relaxed postures somehow conveying an underlying discipline, nothing overtly threatening. Yet their collective presence had a certain weight, a focused energy that drew curious glances from the lounging residents. In the center of this group, walking with a quiet determination that seemed amplified by the company he kept, was Frank Sutton. At the gate, the teenage lifeguard, who had witnessed Patricia's previous confrontations with Frank, looked visibly nervous. Frank swiped his resident access card. It beeped green. The others presented guest passes procured earlier by Mike Johnson, or showed local IDs if they lived nearby. The lifeguard, avoiding eye contact with anyone, waved them through quickly. The group didn't cluster together aggressively. They dispersed naturally, finding spots on the grassy area under a large oak tree, setting down towels and water bottles, chatting quietly among themselves. A few nodded polite greetings to nearby residents. They were unobtrusive, yet undeniably present. Patricia Carmichael, making her rounds near the diving board, spotted Frank almost immediately. Her lips thinned into a familiar line of disapproval. Her gaze then swept over the large group surrounding him. Who were these people? Why were so many of them? And why were they with him? This felt like an intrusion, a challenge to her authority, a disruption to the carefully managed poolside ecosystem. Her turf was being invaded. Clutching her clipboard like a weapon, she marched towards Frank, her stride stiff with indignation. Sutton, her voice sliced through the ambient poolside noise, sharp and commanding. Several conversations nearby faltered into silence. What is the meaning of this assembly? You are well aware of the guest policy limitations. Frank, who had been lowering himself carefully onto a bench, looked up, his expression calm, unreadable. Good afternoon to you too, Patricia. These are friends of mine visiting. Everyone is properly signed in. Friends? Patricia scoffed, her eyes sweeping contemptuously over the group. Her gaze snagged on a discreet logo on Ben Carter's athletic shirt, a stylized Spartan helmet intertwined with the letters Miss. Then she noticed a similar small emblem on Diaz's cap. Police, security, gym rats. Whatever it was, it seemed vaguely organized, unsettling. Her focus snapped back to Frank, zeroing in on what she found most offensive. This is a private community facility, Sutton, not a public gathering place. And frankly, her voice dripped with undisguised venom, her eyes fixed pointedly on Frank's scarred cheek, then dropping pointedly to the prosthetic limb resting beside him. Your personal condition is visually disruptive enough without attracting a crowd. We strive to maintain a certain aesthetic here, a relaxing atmosphere. People come to this pool to unwind, not to be confronted with things that are unpleasant, unseemly. A collective intake of breath seemed to ripple around the pool. Conversation ceased entirely. Several residents exchanged shocked, disbelieving glances. Mike Johnson, standing closest to Frank, took an involuntary half-step forward, his jaw clenched, knuckles white. Ben Carter subtly placed a restraining hand on Mike's arm. A silent command, hold. Let her dig her own grave. From the corner of her eye, Maria Diaz discreetly angled her smartphone, the camera lens capturing the unfolding scene. Across the pool, another resident, alerted by the escalating tension, began filming as well. Frank's voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet, devoid of heat but heavy with a weary authority. that momentarily silenced even Patricia. My condition. Patricia, are you referring to the injuries I sustained during 30 years of service? The service that ensures citizens like you have the freedom to lounge by a swimming pool and complain about the aesthetics of scars earned protecting those freedoms. A flush crept up Patricia's neck. She was momentarily thrown off balance by his directness, the quiet power in his words, but her ingrained arrogance and prejudice quickly reasserted themselves. She doubled down. Don't you dare try to manipulate me with sob stories about your service. That is irrelevant. This is about pool rules, community standards, decorum. Your appearance, she spat the word, is grossly inappropriate for a family-friendly environment. Those scars, that device on your arm, it's unsightly. It makes people uncomfortable. It violates the aesthetic harmony mandated by the HOA. You're upsetting the residents. She waved a trembling hand vaguely around the pool deck. Though most residents were now staring at her with expressions ranging from embarrassment to open disgust. You are not welcome here looking like that. Now, I am ordering you and your entourage to leave these premises immediately. If you refuse, I will call Harmony Creek Security and have you removed for trespassing. That won't be necessary. Patricia, a new voice interjected, calm, steady, cutting through her tirade. Ben Carter stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Frank. A non-threatening, but unmistakable protective stance. His eyes, cool and appraising, met hers. We aren't causing any disturbance. Frank is a resident in good standing, fully entitled to use this facility which his dues support. We are simply here as his guests, ensuring he can enjoy his swim without being subjected to further harassment. Harassment, Patricia shrieked, losing the last vestiges of her carefully maintained composure. The mask slipped entirely, revealing the raw ugliness beneath. I am enforcing the rules. He is the one violating decency standards with his grotesque display. This is a private pool. I am the chair of the pool committee. My authority is final. I decide who swims here, and he. She jabbed a shaking finger directly at Frank, her face contorted with rage. Is not swimming today. Not ever again if I can help it. Get out. All of you. Get off this property before I call the real police. Her voice, shrill and vibrating with fury, echoed across the suddenly still water. Her blatant discrimination, her hateful language directed at Frank's disability, hung heavy and toxic in the humid air. It was a spectacular implosion of petty tyranny, and it was all being meticulously recorded. Just as Patricia drew breath for another volley, two uniformed Metro police officers walked calmly through the pool gate. They hadn't been summoned by Patricia's threats. Their presence was the result of foresight. The SWAT team's liaison officer had discreetly requested a nearby patrol unit be aware of the potential for a civilian disturbance, initiated by Patricia, given her documented history of confrontational behavior. Observing her screaming, gesticulating wildly, and hearing the unmistakable evidence of discriminatory harassment was all the justification they needed to intervene. MAAM Officer Riley, a young but composed officer, addressed Patricia directly, his voice polite but firm. We need you to lower your voice, please. We're receiving reports of a disturbance affecting other residents. Patricia whirled around, momentarily stunned by their appearance, then redirecting her fury. Officers! Finally! It's him! Sutton! He's the source of the problem. He refuses to follow the rules. And look at these thugs he brought with him. They're intimidating everyone. Arrest them immediately. They're trespassing. MAAM Officer Riley responded patiently. his gaze sweeping calmly over the quiet group near Frank, then back to Patricia. These individuals appear to be signed improperly as guests, and Mr. Sutton is confirmed as a resident of Harmony Creek Estates. We have no reports of trespassing. He paused, his expression becoming serious. However, we have received multiple reports, and frankly, Officer Chen and I have personally witnessed you causing a significant public disturbance. More seriously, we've witnessed you engaging in what appears to be discriminatory harassment based on an individual's physical disability, which is a violation of state law. Illegal. Discrimination. Patricia sputtered, aghast. How dare you? I am upholding HOA regulations. Aesthetic standards. HOA regulations do not supersede state and federal anti-discrimination laws. Ma'am, Officer Chen, Riley's partner, added, her voice equally firm, denying access to a public accommodation, which this pool qualifies as under the law, based on a person's disability, particularly when those physical characteristics are the result of documented military service, and creating a hostile environment through verbal abuse and unfounded rule enforcement constitutes illegal harassment and discrimination. We have numerous witnesses and, I believe, she glanced pointedly at the several smartphones still recording. Video evidence. Patricia stared at the officers, then at Frank, who stood silently watching, then at the impassive faces of the group surrounding him, the group whose quiet confidence now seemed to carry a different, more intimidating weight. The ground seemed to shift beneath her expensive sandals. Her carefully constructed world of absolute poolside authority was colliding head-on with the unyielding reality of actual laws, actual consequences. The word SWAT on Carter's shirt suddenly clicked, connecting with Sergeant Major Frank Sutton, retired. Her face paled visibly. You can't do this, she stammered, the fight draining out of her. MAAM Officer Riley said, his tone now brooking no further argument. You need to step away from the pool area and come with us. You are being detained for investigation regarding charges of harassment, public disturbance, and potential violation of state civil rights codes. Detained. Arrest me. The fight surged back, fueled by panicked disbelief. You can't arrest me. I am Patricia Carmichael, the first sit on the Harmony Creek HOA board. This is an outrage. Sutton orchestrated this. He set me up. It's his fault. She began to thrash weakly as Officer Chen took her arm, gently but with undeniable professional firmness. Her shrieks and protests were futile. The officers, practiced and efficient, secured her hands behind her back with handcuffs, the metallic click loud in the sudden silence. They escorted her towards the gate, her face blotchy with rage and humiliation, her indignant cries trailing behind her. Multiple phones tracked her ignominious exit, capturing the final scene of Harmony Creek's pool committee chair being led away in police custody. The videos, uploaded almost instantly, exploded online. Hashtag Pool Karen arrested. Hashtag SWAT team supports HeroVet. Hashtag Harmony Creek discrimination. Hashtag Justice for Sarge flooded social media feeds across the country. As the police car carrying Patricia Carmichael pulled away from the curb, disappearing down the perfectly landscaped street, a beat of stunned silence hung over the pool deck. Then, someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then growing stronger. Applause erupted from residents scattered around the pool. Applause for Frank's quiet dignity, for the silent, powerful statement made by his former team, and for the sudden, decisive end to Patricia's reign of poolside terror. Frank watched the police car vanish, a maelstrom of emotions churning inside him, profound relief washing over weary frustration, a lingering sadness that things had escalated to this point, but overriding it all, a deep, bone-warming gratitude for the unwavering, unquestioning loyalty of his team. Ben Carter came up beside him, clapping him firmly on the shoulder. "Well, Sarge," he said, a grin finally breaking through his own controlled expression. "Took care of that bit of unpleasantness. Now, how about that swim you came here for?" Frank took a long, slow breath, feeling the tight knot of tension in his chest finally begin to unravel. He looked around at the faces of his men and women, Diaz, Johnson, Ramirez, Carter, and all the others, their expressions reflecting shared relief, pride, and deep affection. He looked towards the sparkling blue water, suddenly inviting, peaceful. He nodded, the first genuine smile he'd felt in weeks reaching his eyes. "Yeah, Ben," he said, his voice clearer, stronger. "Yeah, I think I'm ready now." Surrounded by his team, Sergeant Major Frank Sutton, retired, walked towards the pool steps. As he eased himself into the cool water, the familiar, therapeutic buoyancy enveloping him, his friends slipped in alongside him. They didn't crowd him, but their presence formed a quiet, protective perimeter. They swam easy laps, chatted quietly, their camaraderie a tangible force field of respect. Other residents watched for a moment, then turned back to their own activities. The poolside atmosphere settling into a new kind of harmony, one based not on enforced uniformity, but on quiet respect and a shared sense of justice witnessed. Frank closed his eyes, floated for a moment, and felt, perhaps for the first time since moving to Harmony Creek, truly at peace. The repercussions for Patricia Carmichael were immediate and devastating. The viral videos became national news, painting her as the epitome of entitled bigotry. The Harmony Creek HOA, facing a public relations nightmare, intense pressure from residents, and the looming threat of multiple lawsuits, moved swiftly. Patricia was immediately and permanently removed from the pool committee and the HOA board. They issued groveling public apologies to Frank Sutton and the community, implemented mandatory anti-discrimination and sensitivity training for all remaining board and committee members, and initiated a full review of their rules and enforcement practices. Patricia faced criminal charges for harassment and violation of state civil rights laws regarding disability discrimination. The evidence against her, multiple witness statements, numerous video recordings capturing her tirade, was overwhelming. The district attorney pursued the case vigorously, making an example of her simultaneously. Frank, with strong backing from national veterans advocacy groups, filed a civil lawsuit against both Patricia Carmichael personally and the Harmony Creek Estates HOA, seeking substantial damages for discrimination, harassment, and emotional distress. The lawsuit also demanded specific, enforceable policy changes guaranteeing fair access for all residents, regardless of disability. The combined legal and financial pressures crushed Patricia. Her carefully curated reputation was obliterated overnight. Former friends shunned her. Her social standing in Harmony Creek vanished, facing hefty legal fees, potential criminal penalties, and a massive civil judgment. She was eventually forced to sell her immaculate house, the symbol of the status she had guarded so fiercely, and leave Harmony Creek in disgrace. She became yet another exhibit in the growing gallery of cautionary tales, illustrating the spectacular self-destruction that often follows the abuse of petty power and unchecked prejudice. Frank Sutton continued his life in Harmony Creek, the pool now a genuine place of therapy and peace. He was greeted with quiet nods of respect from neighbors, his presence no longer a target, but a symbol of resilience. The story of the day the SWAT team came to swim became enshrined in local legend, a powerful anecdote about loyalty, respect, and the quiet takedown of a neighborhood bully. It sparked necessary conversations within Harmony Creek and neighboring communities about the true meaning of community standards, the importance of inclusivity, and the obligation of HOAs to serve all residents, not just enforce the aesthetic preferences of a privileged few. Frank, the quiet warrior who sought only tranquility, had inadvertently become a catalyst for change, his dignity defended, his right to belong affirmed, not through conflict, but through the silent, unwavering solidarity of the family he had forged in service. The turquoise water of the Harmony Creek pool sparkled on, reflecting a community slowly, perhaps painfully, learning a lesson about true harmony.